How many of you would like to know why you do what you do? How many of you would like to know that? Would you like to know that? Okay. I don't know about you, but at one point in my life, I really wanted to know why I do what I do. Now, this lens that God has given us, that we are communicating to you, is a way by which you can begin the process of understanding why you do what you do. First thing I want to do is I want to turn to Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6. Proverbs 3, 5 and 6. Probably most of us who have been in church maybe all of our life can probably quote this by memory. It goes like this. Trust in the Lord with all of your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all of your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight. Okay, now let's go to Romans 8, verse 28. Romans 8, 28. A familiar scripture, I think, with most of us. Romans 8, 28. And we know. Now, there's a great difference in knowing it in your mind and knowing it in your heart. When you know it up here, you are still in the process. Catch this. You are still in the process of trying to convince yourself that it is a reality. You can know it in your mind, but not know it in your knower, as we like to call it. And we'll work through that. We'll talk about that a little bit more in detail. And we know that in all things, God works for the good to those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. So how are these two scriptures playing out in our lives? What does life look like with those two scriptures playing out? How do we interject our own understanding into life that causes us to interpret the wrong things or the right things the wrong way and leave us dazed and confused in life? Well, let's go to our board, if we can. First thing I want you to understand is experiences in life shape our view of what? Reality. Reality, I think. I made an 8 on my ACT test, so y'all don't hold me to spelling everything correctly, okay? That's not an A on my ACT test. That's an 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on the first time I took it, okay? So experiences, and I can't write and think and talk all at the same time, you know? So y'all just kind of bear with me. We might have a pause or two here. Experiences in life shape our view of reality. What else does it shape our view of? Okay, self. Absolutely. It creates, our experiences in life create an understanding of who we are. Okay, what else? God. Absolutely. What about those times in life? How many of you just really have just an incredible life and just everything that happens in life is just absolutely wonderful? Let me see all your hands. Okay, now we're starting to get honest with ourselves. We're pulling off the mask just for a moment. Okay, life is not a series of just wonderful events that take place all of the time. There are good and there are bad things that happen in life. So when those bad things happen in life, our experiences help to shape our understanding of who God is in the midst of that. What about this one? I wonder if anybody's ever thought this thought before. Where was God when this happened to me? How could a loving God allow something like this to happen in my life? Either this God doesn't have the power, or he doesn't care, or maybe I am not worthy of his time or attention. Experiences in life shape our view of reality, self, God. What else? Our relationships, absolutely. Shapes our view of marriage in relationships. Shapes our view of others. Shapes our view of self. Shapes our view of God. Shapes our view of how the world works. Shapes our view of a world view based upon the things that we experience in life. So basically, we could just kind of sum this up and we could just say this. Experiences in life shape our view of everything. Wouldn't you agree? Everything in life is shaped through the experiences that we go through on a daily basis. So as we're thinking through this process, as we're thinking about those experiences in life, and as you're already beginning to think through in your own life some of the things that have shaped you the most, watch this, especially when you were young and beginning to formulate an understanding of God, an understanding of self, an understanding of relationships, an understanding of everything and how the world works, especially when you were younger. You began to formulate some understandings of many things. So, as we're thinking about life, let's just write L-I-F-E, life, up here on the top of the board. Have you ever noticed that little bitty word that seems to be so paralyzing right in the middle of life? That big what if. What if life was different for me? What if I was born to a different set of parents? What if this tragic event that shaped me so much, what if that event had not happened? Who could I be today had that not happened in my life? What if God would have intervened so that that event never even happened in my life, that has just culminated into an understanding of who God is and who I am as a result of that event? What if my parents loved me enough to take care of me instead of sending me up for adoption? What if my parents had not gotten a divorce when I was younger and I had experienced that whole traumatic event that I still feel is my fault? What if? What if God has perfectly and purposefully allowed everything to happen in your life the way that it has to teach you the things that you could never learn had you not gone through those experiences yourself? Whew. Wow. What if? See, the ifs are not always paralyzing. The ifs can be liberating. If we will allow God to interpret the things that have transpired in our life and sometimes go back and reinterpret the very things that have left us paralyzed the most. So if we take life and we boil it down to the very basic concept, let's just start here with a timeline. You were born, okay, you travel through life, and then what happens? You die, of course. Rest in peace, my friend. Boiling it down to the very basic concept, life is a series of circumstances. Now, some of these circumstances will always be up. Some of those circumstances will always be down. We have a barrage of experiences and circumstances that happen to us in life. Some of those circumstances are a result of the bad choices that we have made. Some of those circumstances are a result of bad choices that other people have made that we have fallen prey to. Some of those circumstances we had nothing to do with except that they were done to us. Sometimes we make bad decisions, sometimes others make bad decisions, and they play out in our life. Okay? Some of those circumstances will be up, some of those circumstances will be down. I have found in my own life that basically there are about 3 categories that all of my circumstances can be wrapped up and summed up into. And that is absolutely incredible. Oh my goodness, oh my God, life is awesome, I love it. You know, I've got a good time that happens in my life. I've got something good that's going on in my life. I love life, man, life is awesome. Ah! Life's just good. We all have incredible, how many of you like incredible things that happen in your life? Me, yes, I do that. We all love good things. We love incredible times in our life. We all have incredible times in our life. Those are simply part of life. It's part of living. Good things going on. We also have some, what I call, so-so, just kind of a blah moment. Just kind of a so-so. You know, you wake up in the morning and you're like, well, you know, I trying to think of the positive here. Well, I guess I woke up. Boy, gee, thanks, God. We just kind of have a so-so moment. We just have one of those moments where, you know, it just seems like not everything is coming together for us like we thought that it should. We had some kind of an expectation of what life should look like by this point in the journey. Does anybody know what I'm talking about here? Okay. We have an idea of what life should look like. We have an idea of what we should look like. We have an idea of what our income should be at this point. We have an idea of what we think our marriage should look like at that point. We have an idea of what we think our kids should look like at this point. We have an idea of what we think life should be like at whatever juncture, wherever we find ourselves. And sometimes when we look at whatever our circumstances are trying to tell us, we look at that and we just kind of go, wow, you know what? The vision that I had in mind, it's just not really lining up to what I thought was happening. My life's just kind of so-so. Has anybody ever had a so-so moment in your life? Has anybody ever had a so-so season? How many of you are in a so-so season? And then we have the oh-so dreaded time in life, and that is horrendous. Now, since I made an 8 on my ACT test, I'm not going to try to spell that on camera, so we'll just put that as horrible. I think I can spell that one. Horrible. Life is a series of circumstances. Some of those circumstances are up. Some of those circumstances are down. Some of those circumstances are incredible. Some of those circumstances are just kind of so-so. They're borderline, no big deal, nothing going on. I just can't see anything really moving, all that much happening. And some of those circumstances are absolutely horrendous. Now, through a series of circumstances, some of them up, some of them down, we begin to formulate some realities in life. Some realities, as we mentioned before, a reality of who I am, the reality of who God is, the reality of how the world works around me, the reality of what is my role in all of humanity and eternity. What is my role? How do I fit into God's ultimate agendas, if He has some, if I am a part of them? We begin to formulate some realities in life. Those realities usually come in about 2 forms. They are an ultimate understanding of how things are and a current understanding of how things are. My current reality is guided by, it is led by what I see in my life at any given moment. But how many of you know that what I see in my life at any given moment doesn't always line up with what God sees at any given moment? You see, that's why our own understanding, according to Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, leaves us broken, busted, and disgusted. So many times in life, we don't have the ability to interpret what God sees at any given moment. Now, this ultimate reality lens, of course, is God's lens, and this current reality lens is my lens. So, if I'm traveling through life and I want to give a scenario of what our life might look like, we're born here and then we have a memory, we have a dot, we have an experience in life, we have a circumstance that happens, and when you're young, you really don't have a whole lot that's, that is going to go wrong maybe from a very young age, and some pretty cool things happen to you. And then all of a sudden there's this little event that's not quite as exciting as this other one, and then maybe there's one down here, and then maybe there's one down way below the line down there, and maybe something happens to you down here, or maybe there's a loss of a loved one, or maybe, sometimes there's women that come into the program at 180 Degrees Ministries, and some of these women come to us and they're molested. And this becomes a dot that has shaped their view of everything in life and the lens by which they process everything that happens is processed through that lens. Everything in life. Who is God that allowed this to happen? Who am I that I was not worth saving from this God? Now, that's just an example, and I know that a lot of us have had many horrendous dots down here. Maybe your parents were divorced, or maybe you were laughed at in school, or maybe like me, maybe there were things that were going on. Maybe there was so many problems in your life that were evident to everyone else around you that you were labeled maybe something that just wasn't quite, what you wanted to be labeled as, whatever that dot is. There's always going to be good things that transpire. There's always going to be bad things that transpire. Some of these things in life will be absolutely incredible. Some of these things in life will be horrendous, and then life is over and we die. Well, if life is a series of circumstances, some of them up, some of them down, if we were to chart our life, how many of you would agree that to some degree, maybe up or down or however the dots go, how many of you would say that your life is captured there on that little chart right there? Up and down. Well, of course, we all will, because this is an overview. It's the top of the funnel, like we talked about earlier. It's the very top of the funnel. It's an understanding of how life works and how we have gotten to the place that we are right now. Well, let me tell you this, that at any given moment in your life, at any given circumstance, at any given experience in your life, there are two things going on. There is your understanding of what's happening, and then there is God's understanding of what He is up to behind the scenes in your life. Part of the reason why we are covering this material, I know this is a lot of information, but part of the reason why we're covering this beginning in the very beginning of this series is so as you go through and as you discover some of the truths a little bit down further at the bottom of the funnel, you will be able to see those truths in light of what we're discussing here along this chart. Because our life is captured in the reason why we do what we do, the way we understand, the way that we understand, the way that we perceive, the way that we see life in every capacity is captured right here, based upon the circumstances and the events that have transpired in our life. So at each one of these, there are two things going on. Don't trick yourself into believing that you see it exactly the way that it really is. Because the enemy loves to take something down here at the very bottom, and he loves to take a snapshot of those most horrible events in your life and cause you to believe his lies and get you to understand who you are based upon an event or a series of low events in your life. That's how the enemy tricks. That's how he steals, that's how he kills, and that's how he destroys our potential He comes in and he just simply tells us things that aren't true. But at every circumstance, at every place, there is also an ulterior and an alternate understanding of what is going on. The enemy tries to paint you an ulterior picture, but God is attempting to paint you that alternate understanding. From God's perspective, there is nothing that will ever touch you. Nothing that will ever touch you that he hasn't either sent or allowed. The beauty of that is that when we get to know and understand the heart of God, you know what happens? We begin allowing him we give him the freedom to take us through hard things in life that we just simply do not understand, because we know that his motives are pure. Everything he does, because his motive is out of absolute love, because that's who God is. God is love. And his motives always to us are out of that motive of pure love. Therefore, if he loves us that much to not ever allow anything to come at us, then we can know that Romans 8:28 is really true in all things. In all things, even the ones that the snapshot that the enemy has taunted us with for our entire lives, that we just simply cannot move beyond. We try to turn from it, but we end up dragging it behind us, and it's always like a monkey on our back. Well, I just want to challenge you. What if that very thing that has challenged you the most and changed you for the worst, what if that thing or those things are the very things that God desires to so set you free from, that they teach you the most valuable lessons in life? You see, if I would have never been hooked on crack cocaine, I would have never known the freedom that Jesus offers. I would have never known his power. I would have never been drawn to his love had I not gone through some of the things that I've gone through. Now, people ask me all the time, what would you change? Absolutely nothing. Couldn't change one thing, because I would not know what I know today of this incredible God. I might know about him, but I would not know him. And let me tell you something, there is a great, great difference. As we get to know the heart of God, as we come to understand the beauty of who he is and why he does what he does and the power that he possesses to accomplish his work in the world today, let me tell you what happens. It allows us the freedom to dive into these things in life that have so shaped us negatively and give God an opportunity to make sense out of those things that have debilitated our lives. Now, I don't know about you, and I don't know where you are in life, but I would be willing to bet that there have been some of those traumatic events that have left you wondering, what in the world am I supposed to do with this? This is why we're here. We want to help you discover the beauty of God's processes that bring us revelation to set our hearts free from those kind of experiences. So as we're comparing and contrasting our view against God's view, let's give you a little breakdown. Let's just kind of put this in perspective for us. Here's my current reality lens, and here's God's ultimate reality lens. If there's two things going on, my perception and his perspective, see, my perception is left to my own understanding. I can perceive what I believe reality is, but from God's perspective, he sees it as it really is. I get the benefit of discovering truth and freedom as I choose to see it like God sees it. And God gives us the ability to do that. So what do we need to know about these two realities? Well, my current reality lens is always feeling-based. My current reality lens is feeling-based. Whatever I am feeling at any given moment becomes my reality. That is my reality. Hey, if I'm having an incredible moment out here, what's up? I love it. Yes. See? That's what I feel. My circumstances are telling me what I should feel. Things are working out in my favor. That's pretty cool. That's awesome. Hey, man, that's awesome. I love it. But watch this. You know this is true. Watch this. After you have an event that so shapes you down here, or many events that so shape you down here, even when you have an incredible event up here, you might celebrate a little bit, but you're always looking over your back, wondering when it's going to catch up with you again. And when you are not going to feel this way because you've had enough experiences to know that that just won't leave. Some of you are smiling out there. On the flip side, our current reality lens is always feeling based. Depending upon what all is going on in my life, I am a slave to whatever I'm feeling at any given moment. And that tells me what reality really is because I feel it. And if I feel it, it must be real. But from God's ultimate reality lens, looking at life through an ultimate perspective, we're not feeling-based, we're faith-based. We begin to say, okay, God, now wait a minute, hold on a second. I'm learning some new things about who you are. I'm learning some new things about who I am. I am discovering truth, maybe for the first time ever, really. And you know, I have lived my life looking at this, and that has kept me from being everything that you've called me to be and doing everything that you've called me to do, and I haven't been able to I just hadn't been able to get free of that. Therefore, my self-protection coping mechanism is to just kind of shut that door of my life and just pretend like it's not there and put on a mask like I don't have any problems. You see, I don't know what to do with that. So the only thing I do know what to do is cope with it because I can't see it ever leaving. And if it never leaves, the only thing I know to do, because I have to have relationships and I need validation from other people, and I don't want them to think that I'm a wreck, and I want to have good experiences in life, the only thing I know to do is to put on my mask so nobody else sees the stuff that's really going down inside of here. And you might go to places and they might tell you to, well, just tell us about those horrible events in your life. Well, let me tell you something. Watch this. Listen. If you don't have a guide to walk you through those, if you don't have someone, really the Spirit of God is our guide, okay? And all we're doing is we're just giving you a lens by which you can process some of this stuff. We're allowing you to see truth played out in your life in real ways that we all deal with. And that's all we're being. We're just being a guide so that the Holy Spirit can allow you to see things in a completely different perspective than maybe what you've ever seen before. So instead of looking at that event and being completely overwhelmed by our feelings, and every time that comes up, or every time, and watch this, here's something else. Every time when you feel something back here, and I promise you, especially those events down there that the enemy takes a picture of, when you feel those events, and you feel them, everything in life not only is processed through that lens, but when you are treated in some kind of way that triggers that same feeling that you had back here, guess what happens? You go right back to what I call default mode. You go right back, and there again, it goes to validate everything that you came to understand to be true about who you are because of this event that happened right back here, or those series of events, whatever that might be. And all of life, everything that causes you to feel that same thing, everything that causes you there, takes you back to that moment, and the enemy is over there screaming at you saying, look, I told you, You'll never get away from it. You'll never move beyond this. There is no hope for you. You are pitiful. You are a loser. You are an idiot. Look at the stupid things that you have done with your life. Look, hey, this God you call you serve, look at what he allowed to happen in your life. And the whole time, he's just going to be speaking lie after lie after lie, and he is going to be toying with your feelings because those events that have been way below the line. Let's compare and contrast some more. My current reality lens, watch this, is governed by emotions. Therefore, we are feeling-based, okay? It is governed by emotions, my current reality lens, my own understanding, governed by emotions and driven by circumstances. Wherever my dot falls on the line, however I interpret where my dot falls on the line, I am subject to whatever is going on in my emotions of the moment. If I interpret that a dot is really good above the line, then my emotions take over and I'm all good with that. If a dot goes below the line and I interpret it as below the line, then I am subject to the slavery that it continues to plague me with a lot of times for the rest of my life. Governed by emotions and driven by circumstances. My circumstances dictate where my dot is on the line. And where my dot is on the line is then stimulating my emotions to feel a certain way. So I am a slave to all of my circumstances lining up above the line so that I can feel okay and I can see myself in a positive lens. Does that make sense? This means yes, this means no. Does that make sense? Okay? Absolutely it makes sense. Of course it does. So watch this. You know what we end up doing? We end up, in order to cope with this inevitable scenario we think inevitable, in order to cope with that, you know what we do? We start trying to manipulate and control everyone in our sphere of influence so that our dots will be above the line, and all we become is a control freak. And nobody can stand to be around us, because we are attempting to make all of our dots line up above the line. Why? Because I'm a slave to my emotions. My circumstances are telling me who I am. They're telling me whether my life is good or whether my life is worth living or whether it's not worth living. On the flip side, God's ultimate reality lens is always governed by love and allowed by God. It's not governed by emotions. It's not driven by circumstances. It operates regardless of what your emotions are trying to tell you, and it operates regardless of what your circumstances are trying to tell you. God is in the business of loving you wherever your dot is, and because it is allowed by God and governed by love, you can know that it is working for you and it is not working against you. So really, when it comes down to it, it is your perception. We have been deceived into believing that this was the most traumatic event in life, when in reality, God desires to use that. And this is something that my wife told me after she went through this about 6 times. She told me, she said, Steve, I just discovered something. What's that, babe? She said, Steve, my worst dots have now become my greatest. Whew. Wow. Freedom happens when the very thing that has left you in the most bondage becomes the very thing that God uses to set your heart most free. Whew. Man. Instead of looking at that and going, oh, we look at that, and at first, it sounds too good to be true. So at first, we just kind of look at it, and we're like, yeah, boy, yeah, that happened. Oh, you know what? I can look at that again. Wow, something's going on, and God's doing something inside of me. How about that? Oh, my goodness. Well, if it hadn't been for that, then I wouldn't have known. Oh, my goodness. Wow. That's God. Oh, my goodness. That's pretty cool. And then we look at that again and we say, well, hey, maybe there's more that I need to discover there. And as God begins to peel that onion back, he takes us to layer upon layer upon layer of beauty that was captured in the very thing all the enemy has done. You know what he's done? He's twisted what God has allowed to be the very thing to set your heart free. My current reality lens is always feeling-based. My lens is governed by emotions and driven by circumstances. And thirdly, it is always rooted in lies. The enemy, again, wants to take a snapshot, and he wants to tell us who we are, who God is, or whatever, based upon whatever we feel through those circumstances. He will always paint us lies, and he will always play on our emotions. Because if we can feel something, it becomes the greatest reality to us. Whatever I feel becomes my reality. The enemy knows that, and that's why he plays on our emotions. But God's lens is always rooted in truth because he sees it as it really is. And as we give him the freedom to give us his perspective, he begins to, where we have interpreted it, or the enemy has helped us interpret it, he begins to reinterpret it, and then he opens it up to find this box of presence there that we believe has kept us from his presence. My current reality lens is feeling-based. It's governed by emotions, driven by circumstances. It is rooted in lies. So instead of reacting, I can choose to act. In my current reality lens, I live on the roller coaster. Again, I am subject to the circumstances. I am subject to the emotions that go with the circumstances. On God's lens, from God's perspective, the ultimate reality, guess what? Watch this. No matter what you do, I don't care how godly you are, I don't care how much you love the Lord, I don't care how obedient you are, your life is always going to look like this. You are always going to have ups and downs in it, okay? So I'm not trying to tell you how to live life so that you can get all your dots above the line. You will always have dots below the line. You need dots below the line to keep you focused on him. But this is what I do know. That instead of being subject to whatever your circumstances are trying to tell you and in bondage because of it, you have the ability to live consistent regardless of where your dot falls on the line. And let me tell you something. There is no one that desires for you to be a greater influence than God himself. And there is no one that desires for you to be more consistent than God himself. He would love for you to be so focused on truth that Jesus just has the ability to just simply live his life through you because you are choosing to see life through his ultimate reality lens. Now, here's the kicker right here. My current reality lens is forced. You are forced to see the circumstances that you go through on a daily basis. You are forced to see current reality happening at every moment of your life. But God's lens is a choice. So my question to you is, what will your choice be? In my understanding of the way that I have lived my life and the things that I have done and the way that I have understood life to play out in God's ways, and as he begins to unfold things the way that he has given me mental pictures and images, I basically see three choices that we have. If current reality lens is forced, I am going to be looking in that direction at all time because this is life. This is life happening in front of me. That's my current reality lens. I am forced to see life. Now, I can choose to hide, in a closet somewhere, but guess what? I'm still going to see darkness. That's going to be my current reality. I'm going to be in a closet. You can hang me up, and say, well, you don't have to make any choices. Well, guess what? You're still going to be stuck hanging from a ceiling by your toenails, if that's what you're going to do. Your current reality is always going to be in front of you. So if we are forced to see current reality, and if God's lens is a choice, then here's our three choices. Number one, we can choose to not even see God's perspective out here. We cannot even entertain the things of God and what God is attempting to tell us through wherever we find ourselves. So here we are, we're looking at life through this lens, and we can just say, you know what, God's just not he's just not in my picture. And I'm just going to live my life for whatever I want to do, and I am subject then to making my dots line up above the line in order for me to feel good about myself or whatever else. I am forced to make my own way through my own issues in life and have my own understanding of whatever that looks like. Okay? So God is not even in the equation. I'm just looking at life and I'm trying to understand it on my own. And then we have another choice. And this is probably what most of us do if we are if we are, at least to some degree, have some kind of a relationship with God, this is what we tend to do. We tend to put God back here, and we tend to interpret the ways of God through the experiences in life. Because after all, we've already established the fact that experiences in life have shaped our understanding of everything. It shapes my understanding of who God is. It shapes my understanding of how God works. It shapes my understanding of who I am. See, if I'm looking at life through this lens back here that has so shaped everything in life, even when I look at God, He's telling me how much He loves me. Oh, I sing over you, my child, my love. Oh, God's trying to tell us how much He loves us. But if I'm looking through my distorted lens that the enemy has painted me to begin with, then I can't even receive. I'll know it in my head, but I won't know it in my knower. And I'll spend my life trying to convince myself that God really does love me. But you know what? He can love everybody else, but He just can't love me because look at... So that's our second choice. We can choose not to discover the things of God. We can choose to see God through a lens that has already been established by the experiences that we've had in life. Or we can choose the third option, and this is what I would highly recommend. Here's what we have the ability to do. Watch this. You ready for this? Okay, sorry. This is what we can do. We can simply switch our lens. After you go through this 2 or 3 times, like most people do, you'll see somebody over in the corner by themselves, and they'll be going. Literally, I mean, that's a hand motion that a lot of us do. We see life this way, and then all of a sudden God allows us to see it as it really is. It's taking these events that have so shaped us, these understanding, these realities that we have grown to discover about who we are, about everything, and we're saying, you know what? Instead of me interpreting God through my lens or truth through my lens, I'm allowing truth to interpret life. And instead of me being a slave to making sense out of it this way and trying for everything to line up so that I can trust in the God who allowed this stuff to begin with, I can simply allow Him to reinterpret those events that have so shaped me negatively that now they become the greatest experiences in my life. Wow.